Okay, you know that that splinter I was talking about yesterday. Well, when my normal truck,
you're going to have to lose your hand, right?
No, my normal trick worked. I sucked it out.
Oh, it did? Okay, it worked.
Yeah, I normally just bite around the edge of it, or try to cut along the edge of it, and then suck it out. Still sore though, but hey.
Oh well,
better gone, right?
It could be.
Yeah.
Well, you could have been gangrenous, and you could have had your hand removed. That's the other thing.
Well, it goes from the thumb to the whole hand to the whole arm to the whole body, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Morning, Mike. Morning, everybody.
Well, if your hand hurts that much, cut off your head. You won't feel it.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Okay, welcome to the show, everybody. Okay, so a quickie here. We got these people here from the and I'm not going to say it correctly, Kashechewan tribe and First Nation, who basically are saying that they want to ensure that the way the story is told about them coming to Niagara Falls is done properly.
Yeah, it's okay. So they have a bit of a thin skin there, if you ask me, but I kind of get it in a way because of how Ken Todd described them. In Ted Todd's report on the unhoused, he made a point that people think that the indigenous people that are staying here because of the disasters that are happening in their northern communities, their isolated communities, bad water, bad sewage, and all that, and lack of investment by the federal and Ontario governments. So they've come down here.
Mm-hmm.
But Ken Todd really stepped in it when he says, well, people around here think they're homeless. Well, that's kind of...
Well, actually, that's not Ken Todd. That's not Ken Todd. That's him observing what other people think. And that's not him falling into a hole. That's other people's stupidity. Yeah.
No, I think it is himself. I think it is himself stepping in it because he should have been a little bit more aware. Because even my eyes raised up when he pointed that out. He could have said it in a different way.
Oh, okay, fair.
What he said is, oh well, these indigenous people. As soon as people see, and in the way in which he wrote it or said it, it says like, well, as soon as people see a lot of indigenous people in one spot, they assume they're homeless. And he says they're not, they're evacuees. But why did he even say that they assume they're homeless? He could have said it in a different way altogether.
Yeah.
He could have said, when you have a lot of people around, and of course that follows the old trope, native people are homeless. Native people are problematic people.
Yeah, there's another element about what he said. Some are causing trouble. Some
of the native people.
You get it. Yeah. That's another point about that. But okay. Some bring a crowd of 1,000 people together, and some will cause trouble.
I don't know I don't remember him saying that the natives themselves were causing trouble.
Well, that's what it's reported here.
Unhoused people. But
it says some are noting that some are causing trouble, some are not causing trouble. Right?
Is he referring to native people there?
That's what the statement. It's part of the statement that was about native people. Yeah.
Well, yeah. For one thing, it was not necessarily put out there.
Yeah.
It was not necessarily that. I think that whole statement from beginning to end was unnecessary. We got all these indigenous people here, and people think they're homeless. I mean, really, what you're doing is just reflecting the prejudice of society, right?
Yeah.
People see natives and they think they're homeless. I don't even know what the purpose of that whole comment was. Basically, his whole report was supposed to be on homeless people and how, and on the unhoused, and how there should be some way and means to deal with them. And then he wanders off on this issue about native indigenous people coming down from northern Ontario and staying in the hotels here. Well, and as the chief said, when in January, when they had fires and other things way back in January, when the hotels were empty, they're pretty happy to have indigenous people staying and they're making money. But now it's tourist season, they don't want them around. That was kind of the implication he sees.
Oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and I think when the chief said, he says it has to be carefully spoken of. In other words, what Ken Todd did was kind of put up a mirror to us and say, look, when you see a bunch of indigenous people, you assume that they're homeless, right? That's what he's pretty much said to us. And that's what he said as he's reported from what people have told him, that when they see indigenous people hanging around the hotels where they're supposed to be housed or are housed, people assume that they're homeless, people just hanging around. Well, they haven't got much to do, have they? Haven't got jobs or anything like that, because their homes are way far away and they're temporarily here. So of course they're going to be walking around, trying to consume their day one way or another.
Well, you could infer that from anybody who you observe, who's been a week in a hotel.
Well, yeah, and we found this of the Roxham Road refugees too. We saw them walking around, walking here, walking there. I
have to say though that I do remember when Ken Todd was actually the CAO. He often stuck his mouth in things that he should not have stuck his mouth in.
Well. Yes, well, and pretty much what the chief says, you got to be careful of this, how you speak here.
Yeah.
And what Ken Todd did, he says, well, these are evacuees, not unhoused people, but he's kind of insulted the whole indigenous. When we have a lot of indigenous, the people around here think they're unhoused. They think they're homeless. Well, yeah, that pretty well tells you where our bigotry level is. We jump to that assumption.
Yeah. And it's a wrong assumption to, because
it's not Ken Todd's assumption. Let's put it that way.
Oh, I know, but he could have put it in different words. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And being a little bit less offensive. He kind of made the case, well, if there are a whole lot of indigenous people hanging around, they must be unhoused, according,
Yeah.
The immediate assumption is they're unhoused.
Mm-hmm.
That might be not his observation, but he could have said it a little bit differently, not to offend.
Yeah.
Could be. I can see why it would be offensive. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right, let's move on. So this is another one that I thought was interesting that was brought up yesterday. Americans' pride in history and democracy dropped, and fewer are proud to be American than ever before, according to a poll that was publicized in AP. And the picture in it is telling, because the gentleman is walking along in a crowded area, demonstration or something, with an American flag upside down.
Well,
with out at the bottom.
Well, we've seen of late that the United States sort of three monkey approach to Israel has really bothered people, and the United States, Israel could do anything it wants. It can murder as many people as it wants, children. And the United States will point out that day on October 7th, 1,200 people got killed. But the same politician will not say that 75,000 innocents got killed in Gaza. He will not say that 25,000 of them are children. He will
Yeah.
say, and so when the average person in the United States thinks that America is for values and ethics, because that was always the thought of the United States. It was a better nation. It was more
Yeah.
moral. It was more ethical. It was for people, and
Yeah.
of course, the pride and what the United States has been doing, the kind of wars it's been having, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, how it's meddled in here and there, and it sees that the wealthiest people in the United States are getting the most power and the most money. Of course, they're going to feel a little bad, but I would tell them not to feel so bad, because the idea of America, the history that they've had up until this time, has been skewed badly. It is kind of given off as a holier than thou state, that it does no wrong, that everything it does is for it corrects its mistakes of slavery and things of that kind. It is a country like every other country. It has a very bold beginning. It had it had a very good start. The country itself, but if you look through American history, it's not much different than the expansionist histories of other nations. It took land from the indigenous people, made treaties with indigenous people, and cheated them out of their land afterwards. It caused wars and pressured Mexico to sell it land. It flim-flammed Mexico. It lied to them. It took started false flag wars to take on their hunks of their country. So when you look at that kind of thing, you think, my God, this isn't exactly what I think of America. But remember, this is what countries do. This is what politics do. It's not really like the general push of the American people have been towards a better, more just society. And they might take their time to get there, but they're getting there. And so I would say to the people that feel really about, I think it's just a realistic approach. Suddenly, they're like, the United States was the glorious city on the hill, the beaming city on the hill to everyone. And then when they they start to look at the real history, the realization, then they feel down crestfallen, because it doesn't look that good. But I would say that, you were fed a bunch of horse manure up until this time. If you look at the realism of your country and your history, you wouldn't say that that's too bad. It's still probably the best place to live if you're going to live among a major power, within a major power. Look at the other major powers, Russia and China. Compare that.
And coming from a fading power, there's a lot to be said about a country like America that seems to be the strongest in the world.
Well, it's still the strongest in the world, and it can still be the strongest in the world. We talk about Thucydides' trap. I'll get that sooner or later, which means that a declining power and a rising power inevitably come to blows.
Yeah.
That necessarily, and China says that doesn't necessarily have to happen, but by saying so, it recognizes the fact we're coming up, you're going down. I'm not so sure that that's going to be the case going forward, because of the different technologies out there, and I doubt very much that China's got a lot of its own problems.
Yeah. Well, there isn't a country on the world, let's be honest, Dave, there's not a country on this planet that doesn't have problems. It's a degree to which those problems impact daily lives of people, I think, that really matters. Every country's got problems, right?
Yeah, well, they got one big problem down south, and it's orange in color.
Well, yeah, but that's in some respects that's why they have an electoral system, and actually that also raises a question of, is democracy necessarily the best approach for government? Because, for example, we get people who are elected ruling over what scientists could, taking ruling over what scientists might well do, when scientists have already got the options. We're looking for the answer. Is it either option A or option B? And the politicians choose option C, which is none of the above.
Well, of course, that's always been the argument. If you
Yeah,
centralize authority into a few hands, like that's better. When China looks at the United States and says, "Look, our system's way better. We started from nothing. We were the most poverty-stricken nation in 1970. We were extremely poverty-stricken. Our people were even hungry. Look at what's happened now. We have we go around China, and when I was there in 2007, I couldn't have been more impressed. Brand
yeah,
new roads, brand new buildings, everything. I could walk to the corner store, get some beer. I could hand the lady my hand full of money. They'll take what they need, and then I could take my beer out of the store. So that's and people seem to be having quite a happy time there, at least in the urban
well,
settings. I hear
and
that
again,
in the rural settings a little bit different.
yeah,
So
but
uh,
again,
so
like I
that's what
said,
China. Let me finish. That's what China says, that it can provide for its people better
yeah.
with a stricter state. But
However,
yeah,
However, is that a
but
facade? Is that a facade? Because if you look at Soviet Russia at the end of its era, um, you could look at the average citizen in Moscow and compare them to the average citizen in London or New York, and you'd find that the average citizen in Moscow had a fairly comparable lifestyle. They're comparable to the West. But yet, outside of Moscow or St. Petersburg, the same was not true.
well, the difference between the Soviet system, you really can't compare them to the Chinese system. Is the Chinese system under Deng Zhao, I forget the guy's name, but anyway, he realized that capitalism was a much better system, that state controlled capitalism could be an incredible weapon of uh, economic viability. And he
Yeah,
was absolutely right. And guess what happened? State run capitalism brought China from a rural little dirt, large rice paddy to an industrial mighty power
yeah,
uh, in the world, the second greatest, within a few years. That
yeah,
was done. And so that's what they say. That's why the Chinese say, if the state controls these things, it recognizes what's good and what's bad out there, it can exploit what's good faster. And that's true. On the other hand, their argument against democracy is democracy might be good, but the average person that votes is an ignorant chump.
yeah,
That's their words, not mine, right? That really don't know anything. And if you look at the complaints about democracy from Plato and Socrates and the other intellectuals back in Greek time, they didn't like democracy because they said that because they had pure democracy, everybody had a vote. He said they said that anybody with a whim or a popularity would win an election,
let me
and that
correct you.
and we saw here too in Niagara Falls who got the most votes in Niagara Falls City
Well,
Council.
let me
It was
correct
Mike
you,
Frank,
Dave.
and that was because he was popular, and that's the complaint. Okay, go ahead.
Let me correct you, Dave. Not everybody in Greece had a vote. The people,
No. I'm talking about the Athenian democracy, right?
not everybody had
What?
a vote. Only the rich had a vote.
No, most of the people in the city had votes, and it was a pure democratic system where everybody had a vote, and you voted on just about everything. And the problem with that is it didn't work uh, because
Yeah,
people voted on whim, according to Socrates and Aristotle. As a matter of fact, that is why Plato came up with the idea, if you want to vote, you have to be a philosopher. In other words, only philosophers could vote. What he meant by that is only educated people should vote. If you're uneducated and unaware of what's going on around you, your vote is useless.
Well, and that is one of the problems we're seeing today in the world, is that we're getting uneducated votes. And like I said, those uneducated votes, uneducated politicians, and uninformed leaders coming to the fore. And scientists say that the world has got only two choices right now. We've got to adopt option A or option B. And the politicians say, well, I don't want any of them.
But basically, those are the arguments that China uses against democracy. And we can see how democracy is being hijacked. In the United States, the democracy is down to two parties.
Yeah.
And of course, the great pumpkin. Yeah. Yes, there is a great pumpkin in Washington. Yes.
The great pumpkin in the sky. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to call him that back in his first term. I forgot about that. Anyway, so the idea here is that if you are not aware of what you're voting for, or your vote can be that popularity means more than efficiency.
Well, it's about how you can buy it very often. I'm not making any accusations here, but you're talking about with one of the questions about back in the Greek times is that they used to actually feed and give wine to the voters.
Well, they did that in Canada. You did that in Canada back in the day.
Well,
you go to the tavern with your local. You go to the tavern with your local guy, and he buy everybody a bunch of beers. That's why they made one of the reasons why they used to close down pubs on voting day, because they didn't want the local politicians going and getting everybody all pissed, and then go off to the voting pool and vote for them. And so that was the machinations of the day. But the fact of the matter is, like, I'm not so sure. I think it is. I think quite often, sometimes I think you should have to pass a test in order to be to elect anyone. Because when I was working at the polls, people didn't know anything. Some people came in there with completely odd ideas. Some people gave me back the ballot and said, "Oh, I think I made a mistake," and they voted for 3 or 4 people. I said, "I didn't want to vote for that one. I wanted to vote for that one." I says, "But you got 3 others." I says, "They think it was like a municipal election if it was a federal." I says, "No, you can only vote for one, and you get only one. You get only one spoiled ballot. So I'm going to give you another ballot, but make sure you vote for only one person, and make sure that that mark is in the middle." So I don't know. Sometimes I think there should be a minimal test. I mean, a new American or Canadian has to learn about their country.
Well,
and sometimes if you get a new American coming into the country, or a new Canadian coming in, they know more about the electoral process than somebody who was born here, because they had to learn it.
Because well, actually, there's a couple of things there. One of the reasons why I say that people who are residents here, who've maybe been here for five or more years, who are residents, irrespective of whether they are citizens, I think in a municipal election they should get the vote. Local residents, all local residents should have the ability to get the vote. And one of the things about immigrants is that teaches them about democracy in our local, about going out and voting in our local area. But
I don't think so. I don't think so, because then you could get a large ethnic group, and they could all go out and vote. If they know a vote's coming up, they can all go out and vote if they're not Canadians yet, and they could really irritate the rest of the people who are citizens. I think citizenship is essential. You become a citizen before you vote.
I'm not saying a federal. I'm not saying a federal.
Essential. And I'm talking municipal too. I'm talking any vote that happens in Canada.
Yeah,
you have to be a Canadian citizen.
Well, part of that is, I guess, that I compare it with the way it was back in the UK. When back in the UK, we get new citizens come in, or we're not even citizens yet, and they've been here. They've been here a year, and they're already voting.
No, because they don't know the lay of the land. Like, if you don't know the lay of the land and you've been living here for 20 years and you vote in an ignorant way, well, that's too bad. But if you're somebody new coming in, you don't know the lay of the land. You don't know how democracy works. I don't think that's a good idea at all. If you come in and whatever time period it takes you to become a citizen and pass the test, it's not a hard test at all, and you.
Oh, no, it's not a hard test. No, it's not. It's not a hard test at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And you come in, and that I think there has to be. I don't think we just give away citizenship. I just don't think that's a good idea. It's a very valuable thing. Canadian citizenship is extremely valuable, and it comes with responsibilities.
Yeah. Okay, so what we were discussing here was that Americans are basically pride in their U.S. history, and democracy has been dropping over the last recent period.
Well, we have the double-edged sword here, because on one hand, there is a lot of people taking American history and slandering the Americans, like slandering their place in history without a realistic approach. And then you have, on the other side, you have people like Rick DeSanctimonious and Trump, who want to rewrite history and tell everybody how wonderful they are and call everyone else haters of the United States. So they want to rewrite history to make it look as best as it can. Rick DeSanctimonious in the schools of Florida will learn that some slaves were really happy. No, maybe content because they didn't know any better or whatever else. So they say, oh, well, they learned trade. They learned to trade and all that. That would be fine if they were free to use that trade as they pleased, but not under the thumb of the slave master. Yeah. So they're trying to take the edge off American history. The original sin of the United States was having we the people and freedom to everyone. Every person is born free and should be free, and yet own slaves. It was extreme contradiction, and yet they couldn't free the slaves because the slaves were the ones who were making the money, vast amounts of money.
Yeah,
like the original United States, before the northern industrial states started to really kick in, the southern states made huge amounts of money on the backs of slavery, growing all manner of things. And that is the real dichotomy of the U.S. history, you know. But you have to remember the times they were in. So everybody tries to judge history on today's terms, and when you look back, you think we were horrible people for having slaves. But on the other hand, everybody was a horrible person because Africans had slaves, Asians had slaves, et cetera, et cetera,
Yeah. Okay, so one thing that Mike has basically said is no Germany, no Holland. The World Cup is and no Italy, because they never qualified in the first place. The World Cup is gone to ruins, I think, is what he's more or less saying. Well, the world's come to an end. And here's the thing, Mike. Take it to the bank. Argentina are going to win. I'm sorry, did I say Argentina? I meant Lionel Messi is going to win the World Cup.
Do you see what's happening? People are saying that things are being fixed so that he could score more goals, right? And I forget which team put it out. They said that the FIFA is fixing it because they needed a superstar to sell it, and so they're making arrangements to make sure that he gets more opportunities and et cetera. It's I mean the amount. Well, we do know FIFA is an extremely corrupt organization. We know that. A lot of FIFA was revealed some years ago where some of the FIFA officials had huge suites in certain cities, in apartment suites. One guy had an apartment suite just for his cat.
Yeah.
And it all came out of FIFA money. So FIFA is an extremely corrupt organization. And we can see it, and they're good with bribery. Look what they did. They invented a FIFA Peace Award just so they could give it to DJT.
Yeah. All right. Remember Black Wall Street? What happened there?
Yeah, in Tulsa. Yeah, so that's a very interesting thing. In the 20s, there were certain in Tulsa, they had a very, very prosperous Black community called the Black Wall Street. What people don't tell you, though, is part of the community, the Black community there, was extremely poor. It had its huge ghetto, but in among that, they had this very, very prosperous area. It's kind of like Harlem, kind of. In Harlem, there was all these really desperate ghetto type places, but in the midst of it, they had some really nice land and houses, and where Duke Ellington might live.
Yeah, not everybody was poor in Harlem, right?
That's right. And basically, then what happened at Tulsa, of course, there was a Black guy that was being arrested on some trumped up charge. Notice I used trumped up charge, and a riot started. So some disturbance started when he was going to go to jail or something like that, and the riot just spilled over. And of course, all the prejudices against Black people boiled up into the minds of the people there, and they destroyed the Black Wall Street. They destroyed the Black community completely, though. The Wall Street part of it was only part of it. I think the poorer Black people suffered the most in that particular time because they had no place to run to. And anyway, it destroyed this what we're told as an extremely sort of extremely prosperous Black neighborhood in Oklahoma, and that is only 60 years after, or less than 60 years, I think, after emancipation, which is amazing that could have happened. However, that when people look at American history and they look at something like that, they think, "Oh my God, we're terrible. We're a terrible nation." No, you're an ordinary, everyday nation. But
every nation goes through struggles, right?
Yeah. And it should be noted, though, that the thing is, these things used to be buried. And then they were buried or marginalized for year after year after year. And the American people were told about how wonderful their history was and how great it was. And then along comes the internet and exposes the real history of the United States, and everybody bums.
Yeah.
Right. And then, but let's face it, let's be realistic. The United States is a great nation compared to other nations. Remember that.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. So a UK doctor is feeling great about having moved to Welland and opening a new practice in Welland, and really loves it here.
Well, he's come out of the developing world of England. I'm not so sure that he is going to have all the education he needs. I hear that he's got his bloodletting knives, and he's got rattles and shakes and stuff like that. I'm not so sure we could take a doctor from Britain. What do you think about that?
I think I'm going to change my doctor to my British colleague right away. I'm gonna head over there and 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 sign up right now.
I would just point this out to everyone. This doctor chose Welland. Do you really want to go and see a doctor that chose Welland to live
I
in?
know you're cynical
Think
about
about
Welland.
that. There's
I
something
know
wrong
you're
there.
cynical about Welland, but I know of several Wellanders who were proud of the city.
Oh, yes, I'm sure. Well, you know, I mean, when you're egocentric and uneducated, of course you. No, I make fun of Welland, but I make fun of Welland in the old days when you could hardly find anyone with more than a grade of 10 education, and that was pretty much there was lots of places for people to work if they dropped out of high school and stuff like that back in those days.
Yeah.
And it was a very unusual town. It had a lot of French. I think it probably still does, but French was spoken widely in Welland.
It still is
right up into the
widely,
80s when I worked in the hospital. In the 80s, like half the staff pretty much spoke French as a first language.
This doctor is basically saying the things that kind of helped him make up his mind: family physician shortage, growing patient demand, an aging population requiring more primary care, and basically he felt that he could make the future his own in that regard.
I don't know. Welcome to the new world. That's all I got to say.
And I know you don't like us British, but hey, welcome here.
Are you kidding me? I love the British. Are you kidding me? I love look the music. The music all my life, the best, most innovative music has come out of Britain. All my life, the best innovative comedy has come out of Britain. I mean, I go for walks. And it's not uncommon for me to suddenly pop into my head Monty Python skit, and I'll be laughing away. This is a skit that happened back in 1970, maybe, and it's still with me. You know what I mean? So, no, I love I love the Brits and their ways. Fuck, I worked with Brits most of my life as a tradesman. It's always Scotsmen and Englishmen, or sometimes Northern Irish guys. I worked with them.
So you were always right on a comedy skit there, weren't you? A Scotsman, an Englishman, an Irishman walk into a bar. But the trouble with those jokes is that who always comes out on top? If it's
well, it depends on who tells it.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it's the Englishman, it damn well is not the Scot and it's not the Irish. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well. Anyway, there's and acting. I forgot about acting. My God, man, the acting that comes out. I think the Brits.
You forgot.
I think the Brits taught the Americans how to act. Because in the generation since the British invasion, how much better American acting has been on TV shows and stuff.
Yeah.
And even the audience does not peg-hole an actor into a certain kind of a role.
Yeah.
You got great American actors now. It used to be that you got a couple of really good American actors and they were typecast all the time. But
a few areas that you talked about musicians, we talked about healthcare people. Well, how about computer programmers? The best computer programmers in the world come from Britain.
Well, I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
I didn't know that part.
Some of the best. Some of the worst as well. People like John McAfee. He's British, and with what he did in the world, hey, forget it. You shouldn't be following his example.
How do Brits rank with paralegals?
Well, actually, the funny thing is, Ontario is the only province in in Canada that actually has legalized paralegals, although BC is looking to do it very soon, and Alberta's a free for all. There's several states in the United States where paralegals actually practice on their own, including Oregon, and they're all taking the actual model from Ontario. And even Britain, there's paralegals actually in Britain that practice on their own.
Well, I think it's a good thing overall because you don't need some heavyweight lawyer for a lot of stuff. You know, you don't. And when you do go to a lawyer, who does most of the work anyway? It's their legal assistant.
Yeah.
You know, you can talk to anyone that's worked in a lawyer's office, right? It's the legal assistant.
When you go and buy a house, and 90% of that, you might go and see the lawyer on the day that you're signing your house over, but 90% of the work, and even they will say so, has been done by the law clerk.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right. Okay. There's a clip on YouTube. Year 1760, white man meets native to become another breed. He was my grandfather, Peter Fielder. Amazing.
There's a clip on YT on was that YouTube, year 1760, white man meets native to become another breed. He was my grandfather, Peter Fiddler. Amazing. So that sounds really interesting. That really interesting. Yeah, definitely. There was a time we talk about the natives and everything. We brought them up at a different time, but there was a time that both Franklin and Jefferson lamented the fact that a lot of young men were escaping their jobs on farms and things like that, and going and living among the natives. That was a big problem for a time because the life that the natives had was much freer, and it was very appealing to a lot of people, particularly indentured servants and stuff. I'm not talking about black people. I'm talking about white people who really didn't were working on farms. They were losing men to the natives, as a matter of fact. If the natives had been more resistant to diseases, there could have been probably quite a large amount of mixed race individuals that would have chose to live among the natives rather than among the so-called civilized whites. We see this with the Métis in Canada. The Métis are native plus mostly Cree, but other native plus Scottish plus French.
But you would have had natives, if you'd have had natural mixing, you'd have had natives, mixed native and invaders living in cities, as well as you'd have mixed native and invaders living in native encampments.
Well, we see what happened in Mexico, right? We had in Mexico the Spanish brought Spanish peasants into Mexico and Guatemala and all the other places, and they mixed. The Mexican nation is I think 68% of Mexican nations are mestizos, which means they are a product of white and natives. And that was how the Spanish planned to do that. They brought them over, and they figured that was the best way to populate the lands they needed. So they had this mestizos, but that did not happen here, did it? No. Because the problem, I think, the real problem was when the Spanish went to Mexico and those places that were heavily populated areas, and they were on their way to more like urbanization in many cases. So in the first 50 years, 90% of the people were dead, of the original population were dead. And those that were but that still left a lot of people. And when the Spanish colonists came over, they were still able to mix with the native people and have that unique Mexican culture. But that didn't happen up here so much, except in the very north, where the French, the Scottish, and the Cree mostly became the Métis.
Yeah.
And,
but there was also, but I think in many parts of Canada and US, there was a lot of racism as well. That was anti-native racism.
There was, but there was also, like I said, a large part of the American frontiers people would mix easily with the natives. The problem was if it was a gradual colonization, it may have blended easier. But what was the biggest problem, of course, was the death rate of diseases, the depopulation, if the natives did not depopulate because of diseases, they would have been able to put up much more resistance and probably become more, there might be a larger mixed race population.
All right. Okay. So, okay, we've got a couple of comments. Scottish and Irish settlers came to where?
Calgary.
And settled with the Métis, Derbyshire was from Earl gave him his schooling, Okay.
Oh, okay. So that's where her ancestor was from?
Well, Derbyshire, no. Well, who he's saying Earl? She's saying Earl of Derbyshire, not Derbyshire.
Yeah, but what did he do? What did the Earl of Derbyshire do?
I'm not so sure. That's Derbyshire was from an Earl, gave him his schooling.
Gave who the schooling?
From
Was
England.
that Fiddler? Was that Fiddler?
Yeah, presumably.
England. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Presumably, yeah. Okay, so let's move on. So Trump's tariffs aren't saving jobs at all. Whirlpool's Iowa refrigerator plant is showing that in fact they're losing jobs because they're on the verge of shutting this plant down.
Well, the two-part objective of the tariffs were, one, to protect American industry. So you put tariffs on things that coming into the country, not just industry, but agricultural products, power, anything else. So what you want to do is you want to put a tariff on a specific country to protect your own. So what you want to do is protect in this particular case, there was tariffs put on washing machines and refrigerators and things that Whirlpool made in all the different brands that it made, Amana and so on, to protect them from cheaper imports from a lot of times from South Korea. So you put a tariff on the stuff that's coming into the country. And what happens is that to protect the domestic, but what happens is a lot of retailers will then boost the price of the ones made domestically, just to just a little bit under the ones that are made outside the country, so that they can make max profits. So if they have to buy a refrigerator at $100 and they have to put another $15 on a tariff, but they can get from South Korea, but they can get the one from an American producer for $80. What they'll do is add an extra artificial price increase on it and make it just underneath the one from South Korea, so they can make maximum profit on it. And so that was what happened before. But in this particular article, it's saying that the tariffs are not working in this particular case. And now it's a mixed article. So there are some successes and some not for the Whirlpool company. But what is happening basically here is it does not look as if the tariffs have worked in saving the or increasing the amount of refrigerators and so on that are made here. The Whirlpool, in this particular case, are laying off people. They're laying off nearly half the workers at this particular plant they're talking about. And other plants are losing people too. And why is that? Well, part of the reason is there are still things that the refrigerator or washing machine manufacturer still needs things from outside the country. And in this particular case, they need imported steel. I don't know if that imported steel comes from Canada, but they need the imported steel because the American industry doesn't make that kind of steel. So they need that imported steel to make, I suppose, the body of their appliances, and that now is cost them more because there's a tariff on that steel. So even though the refrigerator is mostly built in the United States, there are parts of it that come from offshore, including steel, which pushes the price up.
Yeah. And again, taking the tariffs out of the picture for a moment, the cost of American labor may be different than, let's say, the cost of Korean labor. So the American worker may well be paid, 1.5 or 1 3/4 of what a Korean worker is paid, and that would make it more expensive. So the American product may well be more expensive than the Korean product, for example, or the imported product. When I said Korea there, I wasn't meaning to lambast the Koreans. I was just using it.
Well, that was what the tariffs were meant to do, is to equalize that. So if the Korean labor is half of what American labor is, that's what the tariffs are supposed to do. Increase the cost of the Korean one so that it's equal or more than the American.
Basically, your Korean product, your American product that cost you $100 to make it and cost $200 to buy it, suddenly now your Korean product that cost $50 to make it and is tariffed extra, so that it still costs $200 to buy it.
Well, it should cost more, and that's the whole idea about tariffs. So you want your American made and produced one to be $200, and you want your Korean one to be $225 or more. So whatever the tariff rate is. The problem is the components of the fridge a lot of them are tariffed, so it pushes the price of the fridge back up again. And that's the biggest complaint about the kind of tariff regime that the Great Pumpkin has. It is an overall across-the-board tariff without thought. They are, of course, they're now protecting the manufacturer, the Whirlpool manufacturers, somewhat with tariffs, but they're not protecting them about tariffs with components. So a thoughtful tariff regime in this particular case would not tariff the articles that are imported that manufacturer needs, and not tariff those, because then that would really truly make the refrigerator or whatever they're making easier to sell less expensively. So the whole very idea, make your stuff here and it won't get tariffed. But if you need stuff that comes in from the country, out of country, then your article is actually being tariffed indirectly.
Yeah.
The very idea was not the tariff.
Yeah.
So when you have the across the board tariffs, that's not a thoughtful way in which to do tariffs.
Yeah. For example, in your refrigerator that you're making locally, it imports, let's say, because it imports from another country, just to pick one at random, Taiwan. It imports the
well, steel is the big issue, right? That's the one they mentioned.
Steel is the big issue, steel. But I'm thinking importation of marinate. When you talk about it, there's lots of components in almost any product, and a lot of them we do import them, don't we?
Yeah, we do. So if you're saying, "Oh, we got to get all these resistors we're using in the electrical component," Well, we got to
Yeah,
import them. So those electrical components are tariffed. So what the U.S. says, well, we're going to make a resistor factory. Well, that's not as easily done, you know.
Yeah.
So these are not thoughtful tariffs. They're across the board, blunt hit tariffs. Nobody sees, you know. It's like tariffing Canadian oil. So Canadian oil comes into the United States at 3.9 million gallons a day, right? And if the Americans then put a 10% tariff on that, what that does is increase the price of that oil for the American consumer or industry. But what the United States does with that oil then makes money off of it. So why tariff something that you're making money off of?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's like let's say you're I don't use an example. Let's say you are a wood carver, right? An artist that makes mahogany statues, but you have to import the mahogany, right? In the United States, there are no mahogany trees, but you can get them from places in Africa,
absolutely,
or
yeah,
right, or South America.
Yeah.
So you're tariffing
Brazil
the
or
mahogany tree that the guy needs to use as his skill. So he takes the mahogany, he converts it, or he or she converts it into something much nicer and sells it, maybe sells it all over the world. But it's like shooting yourself in the foot to put a tariff on the mahogany that's coming in. You know what I mean? All you do is raise the price for the consumer of that good when you don't have mahogany. If you don't grow coffee beans, why are you tariffing coffee beans? If you don't grow bananas, why are you tariffing bananas? These is blunt force tariffs. They're not thoughtful tariffs.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole point is that if the only place you get coffee beans from is Brazil or South America, you don't have them locally grown, why are you tariffing them at all?
Well, that comes to the second reason why there's tariffs. The second reason why there's tariffs is to make up for the tax breaks they're giving, mostly the rich, but everybody. So if you give everybody a tax break, where are you going to make up that revenue? Right? The United States does not have enough revenue coming into its tax coffers as it is. So if you give everybody a tax break, how do you make up the tax?
Well, that's not helping.
Right? So what you do
helping.
is you tax your people with tariffs. So that's a tariff tax. You now tariff everyone with that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the tariff tax is the thing that hurts the average person more than it does the wealthy person, because the wealthy person can buy bananas at $2 a bunch, and that will hurt you because without tariffs they're $1 a bunch. With tariffs they're $2 a bunch. Well, the wealthy person doesn't care about that, but the average person who's buying for the family, they might go without bananas. They might start finding other alternatives. So what you're doing, that's blunt force tariff. It is to fill up the coffers of the American Treasury. And you find it like, and they're trying to find ways in which to fill up the Treasury in every other way. Right now, the Gordie Howe Bridge is not being opened because Trump has decided he wants a hunk of the tolls. And the agreement for the Gordie Howe Bridge was that Canada collects tolls until the bridge is paid for, and then they share it between Michigan and Canada. But Trump decides the tolls might be a good source of revenue for him.
Yeah. But that's exactly the way the Peace Bridge was built. The Americans paid for it. They collected the tolls until it was paid for. Then the tolls were shared between the two nations.
Well, the big problem here is the person that owns the Ambassador Bridge gave $1 million, and he gave it via Lutnick, who is the kind of the worm tongue of the administration, and he goes whispers in Trump's ear. Meanwhile, during Trump's first administration, he loved the Gordie Howe Bridge, thought it was a great idea, and then didn't even look at it a second time until someone says, "Well, you know what? The guy that owns a 100-year-old bridge down the way there, he's gonna he's overcharging everybody to go over the bridge because he's got pretty much a monopoly, and he doesn't want any competition. So here's $1 million. See if you can see it our way, okay? Great Pumpkin.
Yeah.
And the Great Pumpkin did, and he's looking pretty stupid, but still, he gets away with stupidity. I don't know. The guy is unbelievably resistant, like an unbelievable survivor. I don't know anyone who can do so many stupid things and corrupt things and get away with it. It's unbelievable.
All right. Okay. Okay. So we're not going to be here tomorrow, right? So we're kind of shutting down for Canada Day, and we won't be here on Independence Day either.
Why not Independence Day?
Well, because it's a weekend.
It's a weekend.
It's a Saturday.
Yeah.
I always find it amusing to talk to an American on Independence Day, and they say, "You're not off work," and I say, "No, we don't have the 4th of July off." Because they assume that everybody has the 4th of July off.
Yes, indeed. I think what are we? We're 4 days shy of being 91 years younger, something like that. Anyway, as I do every day, I'll bring up Gaza and the horrific situation in Gaza and the West Bank. I'll have to bring up the West Bank because the brutality that's happening in the West Bank cannot be looked past. As you see in the American political system right now, both of the parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, are split within themselves. There is the heavily dosed Israeli AIPAC type of politician, and they're the ones that are now backing away from that and rejecting AIPAC money and rejecting AIPAC or in as many as many lobbies as they can, but AIPAC is the big one. So those are big issues right now. You see in the Democratic Party right now, the old Schumer, Pelosi type party that automatically gave Israel the green light, and you find the Republican Party that automatically give green light. Those are being broken in half. Both parties are changing. Both parties are becoming, independent of the Israeli lobby. So we'll see what happens there. I think a lot of the brutality that we're getting from the Israelis right now, they're mowing down the houses in southern Lebanon. There's no need to do that. They could take southern Lebanon and leave the houses in place, but they don't do it. They mow them down. Why are they mowing them down? Because they don't want anybody to have a place to come back to. That's what they're doing in the West Bank too. They've been attacking Christian villages of late and knocking them down, pushing the people out, and then just destroying the village so the people don't have a place to come back to.
And you can't. And if you've mowed it down, you can't find the village either, can you?
No. And when they put a settler, the settlers put up a development on top of the old village. They changed the name.
Yeah,
and they did. That was what they did in the creation of Israel, when they pushed the Palestinians out during the Nakba. All the little places where the Palestinians lived, they all changed their names to Hebrew names or destroyed them if they weren't going to repopulate them. So the brutality of the situation, it just continues, and brutality is met with brutality. When you hit me, I'm hitting you back. When you murder one of mine, and we're murder one of yours, et cetera, et cetera. Except the problem now is not one for one. It's like I kill one of yours, you're killing 100 of mine, kind of thing. The whole thing has to stop. It's just stupid. And we find that the incredible power of the Israeli lobby is beginning to wane, but they're fighting back with vehemence. And you have a lot of the American politicians still thinking that the Israeli lobby will win out in the end. And that's so they have dual loyalties.
Yeah.
And I would say to the American voter, don't vote for anyone who has a dual loyalty. America first, right? And I would say that for Canadian politicians too. Anyways, without further ado, I bid you adieu. Pray for peace.
Right. Absolutely. Bye.